for a sound check here. Sound check. There we go. Weird, I hear a disembodied voice. Sounding much like myself.
No.
Okay. So, are you in the chat then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, something is not up to date. Going 0 still. There we go. Okay. Dude, they're pushing that shit hard. Every once in a while, at work, I'll have a tab open that is not doesn't have my normal Gmail stuff signed in, so it doesn't have that account. So and like every single time I start a video, it's like, "Do you want premium?" I'm like, "No, I already have it." I'm just.
Oh yeah, because you have Red, don't you? The premium. That
I had
no ads.
Yeah. So
A lot of people could make a lot of money if they take ads off of things for you.
Yeah, that's pretty much true. In fact, I'm going to skip out on the Disney Plus bundle thing. I mean, for one, I don't know how much the ESPN thing is that interesting to me.
It's
but
not.
On
It's
top
the Hulu.
of it,
The Hulu's great, but if it was ad free,
yeah,
charge me $3 more and I'll pay for it.
Yeah,
I seriously would. But
yeah,
I'm not going to downgrade my Hulu.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck off.
I'm the same way. I'm like, nope, not going to happen. Okay, so let's go ahead.
They got to have a bundle like that coming soon.
No, because they probably want to. I mean, with a lower price point, they probably just want to force people into the ad thing because then that's going to generate them more revenue. So, Bart Simpson had it right all those years ago. I'm the head of an evil organization, right?
I'm the part of an evil organization.
So I'll go ahead and hit the intro here. We got a couple people looking like in the chat. Nobody's chimed in yet, but I guess I could change over to live too. Not that it makes it much early on, but let's go ahead and hit the intro and get started.
And change the slide.
Yeah, that too.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, but not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set, and blew. Child Roland to the Dark Tower came.
We are quartet, one from many. The palaver begins.
Hello and welcome to Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's Magnum Opus, the Dark Tower series. My name is Tad.
And I'm Peter.
And we're here for a book club, number 17 for Drawing of the Three. We're just getting into, we were just talking before we started recording here, getting into about the 75% range here, which is exciting, getting here to the final ends here of the book.
We're that far in.
Well, people listening on a podcast can't see that.
Oh, right. I'm holding up my book with my bookmark hanging out, showing how far we are. Sorry, guys.
Yeah. So yeah, we're here for this, and actually, we just and I tweeted this. So if you have if you follow us on Twitter, you will already know this. But this is actually going to be our last book club of 2019. So for the Year of King, we would normally have one still a couple episodes from now. I believe it's beginning of November.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're actually going to do for that one is we're actually going to have a Unfound Door episode for The Institute.
Yep.
The new Stephen King novel. So if you're reading that or have read that, be looking for that episode at the beginning of November. We'll have a couple up roundtables in October. And then we still have a call-in show that we've teased. So that'll be coming as well. But yeah, this will definitely be the last book club of 2019. So, which means that looking at where we're at in the book, we're probably only a little ways into 2020 before we finish this book.
2020. It's just crazy to say that.
Yeah, it is. So, well, first off, let's jump into the normal things here at the beginning. First of all, we're not going to warn you about spoilers because unless you are earlier in the book series than we are currently, there won't be any spoilers in this episode. With our book club episodes, we don't go any further than we are in the book club. So if you are not all the way through the 7 primary books, these are the episodes that are safe for you. I guess, of course, the caveat being if you're, further behind than we are, which if you've been reading longer than like a week or two, I don't know how that's possible as slow as we go. But yeah, so if you are, as long as you're not like in book 1 or early book 2, you have no worries about spoilers here.
Yep.
Next up, if you want to find us, you can find us on Apple Podcast Services. You can stream us on Stitcher and pretty much find us on any podcast service out there. If you could be so kind as to subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, we would appreciate that. We also have the show notes at darktowerpalaver.com. Generally, there aren't anything with the book clubs for show notes, so don't worry about it for this episode. But if you want to find anything from the past, you can find it on there. If you want to get in touch with us, there's a number of ways to do that, and Peter can let you know about those.
Best way to reach us is through email. It's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. Ted already mentioned it earlier. We do have a Twitter. It's @darktowerpod. That's @darktowerpod. If you're listening to us live, you're listening on YouTube. That's youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. Make sure to hit subscribe, like, and ring the bell is what I'm told it is now, to get notifications for when we go live, because sometimes we had it a couple months ago, or was it last month, that we had some episodes on random off days that due to scheduling and everything like that. So subscribe, ring that bell, get notifications. I saw something the other day on that. You can actually like set it now instead of just all or nothing. You can actually turn on like preferred, like only let me know when they go live, let me know when they post a new video and stuff like
okay.
that. So
Okay, cool.
supposedly, I didn't do research into it. I just saw that. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I should mention that on the next podcast.
Yeah, indeed. It would make sense to have such things because there are certainly different highlights that people would probably want. But yeah, that's good to know. So yeah, we're here. Like I said, 75%, just about. I think Kindle is telling us 74%, so just under, I guess. And we are in subchapter 11. And as I usually do, I'm gonna put you on the spot. Do you remember what chapter we are? Can you thumb there? And
I'll find it.
Because I'll say you could usually thumb through easier than on a Kindle. I can. I don't know.
Oh yeah, it's reshuffle, so it doesn't give me a chapter.
Oh, that's okay. So we're subchapter 11 of reshuffle. Yeah. So that's where we're at. And basically, where we left off, Eddie has left. Let's see, Odetta at the third door. After hearing a cat screeching in the distance, handed her the gun. There was kind of an argument there, but the argument was settled, and he is basically bolting back with the wheelchair to go pick up Roland and bring him this last leg of the journey. As so as we're 3/4 of the way through the book, basically, we're to basically in that last stretch to the third door. So. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at. And in subchapter 11, we can start off here. I have the very first thing highlighted. The gunslinger heard a reedy wailing sound approaching him, tense for a moment, and then heard the panting breath and relaxed. It was Eddie. Even without opening his eyes, he knew that. Which I love. Again, it's just the razor's edge of Roland's, like acuity, right? Just to be able to
senses,
just to be able to like sense that, even from like what would probably be whether he's deep asleep or asleep or just laying there, like he's certainly not dulled in senses to know pretty much instantly that it's Eddie approaching and not some wild cat or some beast.
A monstrosity.
Yeah, so
Dead a chick.
Yeah. Although those are fairly limited, fortunately for all of us, I guess. Imagine how much different this story would be if those buggers,
free roaming.
Yeah, if they just wandered as far and wide as they wanted to.
No thanks.
Yeah. Looks like Mark just showed up in the chat. How's it going, Mark? Good to see you.
Oh, Mark.
Yeah, so do you have anything? I actually have a sound clip here fairly early on.
Right before the sound clip, because there's this section here that says, Roland opened his eyes. Eddie stood panting before him, with sweat running down the sides of his face. His shirt was plastered against his chest in a single dark blotch. Any last vestiges of the college boy look Jack Endolini had insisted upon were gone. His hair hung over his forehead. He had split his pants at the crotch. The bluish-purple crescents under his eyes completed the picture. Eddie Dean was a mess, which I think it's hilarious to see it come like full circle around, because he had started to look a little bit better, and now he's been through this, and now he's a mess again.
Yeah, this is quite the ringer to put him through. Like he basically has basically sprinted in a lot of ways, and with weight one half of the distance and not the other way. Now he's going to have to go the other way again with a fully loaded wheelchair back towards the door.
Right.
So yeah, he's run himself ragged for sure. And yeah, I think for me it's always interesting because I think for the first number of times I read it, I didn't really have a heavy picture for some of these characters, including like Eddie.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've said on the roundtables before, I've always kind of pictured Eddie like the actor that played Larry in the Stand miniseries. But like he kind of already I guess he kind of has like the shaved look stuff, but it's weird to me. I don't think that, even though we get these descriptors at times where he doesn't, he's like got a maybe more of a scruff going on or longer hair. I'm not sure that ever really like entered my mental picture. I don't know if that ever happens to you, but even though the author's telling it to you, there's just something like that just doesn't stick, where your mind just still kind of like fills them in another way. Does that happen to you?
Yeah, it does.
Because like I don't think I've ever really pictured him with like the Grizzly Adams look by any means. Getting a little bit, like it just, I picture him like maybe skinnier, more gaunt or whatever, but never to the spot where like I kind of get him with like more facial hair or whatever. That's never really been in my head, so that's just the way I read, I guess. So let's go ahead and listen to, I guess what'll be our only sound clip in this episode as well. I guess I can say that. I don't know. I've gone a little ways ahead of probably where we'll go, and I didn't get any sound clips beyond this one. So let's go ahead and take a listen real quick.
I made it, he said. I'm here. He looked around, then back at the gunslinger as if he could not believe it. Jesus Christ, I'm really here. You gave her the gun. Eddie thought the gunslinger looked bad, as bad as he'd looked before the first abbreviated round of Keflex, maybe a trifle worse. Fever heat seemed to be coming off him in waves, and he knew he should have felt sorry for him. But for the moment, all he could seem to feel was mad as hell. I bust my ass getting back here in record time, and all you can say is you gave it a gun. Thanks, man. I mean, I expected some expression of gratitude, but this is just over-fucking-whelming. I think I said the only thing that matters. Well, now that you mention it, I did, Eddie said, putting his hands on his hips and staring truculently down at the gunslinger. Now you have your choice. You can get in this chair, or I can fold it and try to jam it up your ass. Which do you prefer, master? Neither. Roland was smiling a little, the smile of a man who doesn't want to smile but can't help it. First you're going to take some sleep. We'll see what we'll see when the time for seeing comes, but for now you need sleep. You're done in. I want to get back to her. I do too. But if you don't rest, you're going to fall down in the traces. Simple as that. Bad for you, worse for me, and worst of all for her. Eddie stood for a moment, undecided. You made good time, the gunslinger conceded. He squinted at the sun. It's 4, maybe a quarter past. You sleep 5, maybe 7 hours, and it'll be full dark. 4 hours. Right. Till after dark. I think that's the important thing. Then you eat, then we move. You eat too. That faint smile again. I'll try. He looked at Eddie calmly. Your life is in my hands now. Suppose you know that. Yes. I kidnapped you. Yes, softly. Eddie heard his chest rattling and cared very little for the sound. To any further discomfort, he finished. I don't want to kill you. Then he was interrupted by a sudden harsh burst of coughing. Lie down. Finished.
Yeah, so I wish it was mics had been unmuted because you were making some comments there as we listened. Certainly siding with Eddie, it sounded like here in the off mic
To a point.
when Roland said you left with a gun. You grumbled.
Yeah, ungrateful ass.
Which is funny. I mean, because I'm at this point, especially the first time, and earlier times reading, I was just as infuriated at Eddie. Still, I mean, because it just happened, so I didn't have time to fully whatever, and I'm just fully on Roland's on board with him, where I'm just fucking give it to him. Like, how fucking stupid does he have to be? Like, he knows what the fucking danger and stuff. So that's just my that's my mental.
No, I totally
place.
get. I really do. I totally get where Roland's coming from. Like, it's a really stupid move by Eddie to leave the gun with her because it's not just her.
Yeah, exactly.
So it really is a stupid move. But still, it's just like, come on, man. Like, honestly, part of it is not necessarily defense of Eddie. It's more like self-preservation. It's like, God damn, dude, he's gonna fucking leave you here in a second if you don't stop.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, but I think probably from Roland's perspective, though, he's probably thinking about it as now that adds a variable to this whole thing. That puts more out of his control and puts him in more danger, and he's not necessarily in shape or the position to be ready too much. I mean, let's just assume that down the beach, Detta's waiting at the door with the gun instead of Odetta, and she just starts firing. Like, they're fucked, and there's nothing they're gonna really be able to do to you know what I mean? Like, that they would be in a very poor situation, and I'm sure that's what Roland's. Where he's coming from, you know what I mean?
And like I said, I totally get it. At the same time, though, he's going to be in a much worse off position if Eddie just goes, you know what, fuck you, turns around and leaves.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just saying from his perspective of where he's at. I'm sure that that's all that's registering for him is fuck, dude. Maybe if I wasn't poisoned and if I wasn't down a number of fingers,
right,
and if I had shells I knew I can count on in the gun that we have left, you know what I mean? But he doesn't. There's all these things against him, and now in his mind he's got to think the worst and expect Detta to be waiting for them with the gun now. He's just that's got to be a shitty position for him to be trying to think through a little bit. But that's I mean, of course, the great Frank Muller here giving us some great performances.
So good.
Yeah, very good with the voices there. I love even those tail lines where it just goes back and forth without telling you who's saying what. I mean, you could always tell. But just by, if nothing else, the cadence of back and forth, right?
Yeah.
But it's so much, it enriches it so much with Frank because he does the voices that there's no doubt in anyone's mind who's talking here.
Eddie's got that nice accent.
Yeah.
Roland's huskier.
Yeah, and he's even given Roland kind of I think Roland has kind of more of the bass voice that Frank uses for these books. Although it's not Frank's bass voice, the more I've listened to some of his other stuff, the more I realize he's actually doing
a deeper voice.
He's doing a certain thing with his voice, which he does in some other books, but not all other books. There's been ones where I'm like, oh cool, Frank Muller, and then I'll listen to it. Then a ways in, I'll be like, wait, who's the narrator here? I'm like, wait, it's Frank Muller. And because I'm just expecting to hear what I've heard for, a good chunk of the series with Frank. And yeah, he sometimes he sounds different, which throws me off. But what else do you got? And we obviously he's going to have Eddie sleep and then they're going to eat. Because ultimately you don't want him just pass out for hunger or fatigue.
The one of the things that I took away from this, and I remember this from my very first time reading, is Roland doesn't just say, hey, we need you to sleep for us, for me and for you. But he also points out that it's important for Odetta as well. He's like, what does he say? Bad for you, worse for me, and worst of all for her.
Yeah.
Talking about Eddie passing out on the way back.
Yeah.
So that kind of opened my eyes a little bit, that it's not just heartless. His reaction to Eddie giving her the gun, it's not just heartless. Oh, you didn't listen to me.
Yeah.
That's not what it is. It's true analytics of analyzing the situation and going, okay, I had a formula to solve this problem. And now you've just thrown a variable in there, like you said, that I have to account for.
Yeah.
And it's one of the frustrating things about Eddie is it's a lot of the stuff that he's done has been something like this, where he thinks about himself and doesn't think about the whole equation kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so that's not on him,
Yeah.
There was one part in the shootout at Balazar's where I think Roland tells him to not break cover, and Eddie breaks cover because they toss Henry's head out.
Yeah.
And he's like, great, now I have to cover him.
Yeah.
Like, there is no thinking there. It's
Yeah.
just, Eddie's a very reactive person.
Yeah.
Something happens, he reacts to it.
Yeah.
He doesn't stop and pause and think about it, which is funny that Roland has become that, because what we saw in book 1, Roland doesn't think around corners.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of interesting that you would kind of expect a new character to be introduced that would complement Roland, not make it a little bit harder on him.
Yeah.
Which at times, case in point right here, Eddie does.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Now, do you, from your mind, do you think that Roland expected him to come back with the gun? Because, like me as a reader, the second they went away with the gun, I'm like, he's going to fucking give it to her. Just remember that just being like, it's just like one of those where, and like for me, again, I'm like pissy about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, the motherfucker's going to give it to her. You watch. And then like, of course, like we got teased with it where he tries and she says no. And that seems the end of it. So there's like part of me that kind of like relaxes a little bit, but there's still like a tension where I'm just like, there's still going to be something.
It's not,
he's still gonna
you're not
going
to release until he's away from her with the gun still in his belt.
Pretty much. Because it's just like anything like storytelling wise, I would say pop culture / movies or TV, but it's anything. I mean, there's there's books, there's there's legends and fairy tales and myths. Like this kind of thing is just so ingrained in all these storytelling types that it's like you just expect it. And I don't mean to say that it's a bad thing, but it's just one of those like because ultimately at the root of it is emotion, right? And I think we've talked about on our previous shows before how different you and I are with how we approach things. And I approach things more Roland's way, where it's just like emotion doesn't really have a whole lot of place, does it? So that's just, I don't know. I just wondered what your thought process. Did you think Roland expected the gun to be gone? Was he more just saying it more of like is he saying it because he's like shocked that Eddie didn't listen to him, or is he saying it just more as like an accusation of like, I knew this is going to happen, but still doesn't mean I'm not going to fucking jab it in his side and say you left the gun with her. I guess like, because that could be read a couple different ways, right? Like, so
well,
how did you view it?
I don't think of it as that way, where it's like Roland doesn't play those kind of games where it's like, okay, now I gotta smack him on the back of the head and teach him a lesson, that kind of thing. It doesn't feel like one of those things. It's more of I think he told him because he honestly believed that he could get through to him and reason with him.
Okay.
It's kind of like what you've talked about before, and you just brought it up. Emotions. It's like you talking to me about emotions. You're going to say, hey, look, disregard that shit. Let's look at the facts.
Yeah.
And I may do it, I may not.
Knowing you'll probably
and knowing me, I probably won't. I probably won't disregard emotions.
Yeah.
I probably will still consider them. I still probably will make a decision based off them, because that's just the type of person I am.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't necessarily mean that you're, like, if something goes wrong, I didn't listen. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be like, well, dude, I fucking told you.
Yeah.
I don't get that feeling from Roland here.
Yeah.
It's just like all right, so you left the gun. All right, now we have to deal with this shit.
Yeah. Okay. But do you think that he expected him to? Like,
I think yes. Otherwise, he wouldn't have talked to him. Because if it doesn't need to be said, Roland's not going to say it.
Okay.
So I think that's where it comes down to, is Roland's a man of few words.
But like, okay, so like when he tells him don't let your guard down, and then he knows Eddie's going to fall asleep. So he just kind of like pretends to sleep and then lets Detta brain him. So like in this way, do you think that like in the same way he just expects Eddie to fail when he tells him like, hey, don't be fucking stupid, don't give her the gun? Does he expect him at that point just to fail the same way they did with the sleep? I don't know lesson, because in his mind he thinks of it like court.
He does talk about that one as like a lesson.
But
this one doesn't come across that way.
Okay, so you
comes
think that
across,
he genuinely believed that Eddie would come back with the gun?
He talks about Eddie. He talks about Eddie a little bit a while ago, about how far he's come.
How he's matured.
He's out of the addiction. He's found Odetta. Okay, now I can start using this.
Yeah.
This instrument is what it kind of comes down to. I can start using it, but I am still going to have to guide it.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. It still can go off a little bit, and if it goes off, I may lose some more fingers. We all know that I don't have many to lose.
Yeah.
To spare. So I think that's what it is that, and that's why he flares up so bad when Eddie says, should I leave her the gun? Yeah, leave her a loaded gun. What the fuck are you thinking? Basically is what Roland says.
Yeah.
Because he thought Eddie would have known better on his own. So it's almost kind of like a little defensiveness. You know, when you're like, yeah, I'm going to bring this friend in, we're going to play this game, or I'm going to bring him in and I'm going to work with him. And then it gets to a point where you're like, God damn it, dude, I fucking expect you to be better than that.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So when it came down to that, I think that's where Roland is a little bit upset. And maybe honestly, he's a little mad at himself for even trusting Eddie with the gun.
With it, yeah. Yeah.
Because, you know, there's no indication here, none whatsoever in these. It's 2 pages for me. There's no indication here whatsoever that Roland is, like, disappointed or pissed or anything like that. Honestly, I think maybe part of it is that he's just too fucking sick.
Yeah.
He just may be like, you know what?
He doesn't have the energy to expend.
No, exactly. And that's where that line comes in. You gave her the gun. He's like, I busted my ass, and that whole little speech from Eddie. He's like, I think I said the only thing that matters.
Yeah,
and that's where you can see what I'm talking about. Roland doesn't go into it. Why didn't you fucking listen to me? I told you not to leave the berating afterwards.
Yeah,
because that doesn't matter.
Yeah,
Eddie's not going to learn from this. Eddie's not going to change. Roland knows this. He still trusted him with the gun because he needs him instrument again.
Yeah,
but at the same time, it's not going to do any good to sit there and fucking argue over it and berate him and put him down and shit like that.
Yeah.
Eddie knew what he was doing. Eddie could have listened. He didn't.
Yeah.
And this is how Roland's always been. Great. Go to sleep. Let's get up the beach.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Yeah, do you have anything else in this subchapter? My next thing is over in subchapter 12 here.
I do. The next chapter right after the sound clip, Eddie did Roland says lie down. He finished. Eddie did. Sleep did not drift upon him as it sometimes did, but seized him with the rough hands of a lover who is awkward in her eagerness. He heard, or perhaps this was only a dream, Roland saying, but you shouldn't have given her the gun. And then he was simply in the dark, and for an unknown time, then Roland was shaking him awake. When he finally sat up, all there seemed to be in his body was pain and weight. So, I mean, that's where kind of, I think that's where maybe King's like playing both sides there. Did Roland say it? Or was that just Eddie fucking with himself in his head again?
Yeah.
You could be a fan of Eddie and be like, man, that Roland's such a prick. Look at him. Oh. Look at him jabbing him right at the end of there.
I'm a Roland fan. I think that Roland probably said that. That seems like his kind of thing. Like, maybe he's not going to make it into a big old like thing, but it doesn't mean that he's not going to get one last like barb in there, you know, to just be like, you still shouldn't have fucking done it, you know,
dumbass.
Yeah, like it just, that feels very, very Roland to me. So yeah, I don't think that Eddie imagined that. I think it was probably more as just he was in that realm of like non-sleep, like that intermediary period that he just it's like it may as well be a dream at that point, and it may have been a dream, but I don't think that it was personally.
Yeah, and then skipping down to the end of this subchapter here, this is what I really wanted to bring up. Roland's eyes were on him, questioning, "Are you ready?" Eddie nodded. "Yes." "Are you?" "Yes." "And you?" "Yes." So they ate, and then Eddie began his third and last trip along the cursed stretch of beach.
Yeah, and I think that when you mentioned that last bit that you read, though, with him being sore and stuff, like, yeah, like he's going to be physically beat with everything that's gone on over the last little bit.
You know, you read stuff like this and you watch movies and you're like, oh, fucking, the one that pops into my head is one that I've done since I first ever watched the very first movie. Lord of the Rings. You got to walk to a fucking mountain and drop a ring off. How fucking hard is that? I don't give a shit if it's the most cursed ring and it weighs 20 pounds. It's a fucking walk. It's not that fucking hard. And then you actually look at it and think about how far they actually went.
Yeah.
I mean, for God's sakes, in Fellowship of the Ring alone, they went up a mountain, back down it. Okay. I live next to the fucking Rocky Mountains. Do you know how hard it would be to get my fat ass up one of those mountains and down? Then on top of that,
to get to almost the summit and be like, we can't
go. We got to go back down and go underneath it. Then to walk to the mine, get into the mine, run through it almost the entire way,
Yeah.
out the other side, into a forest. Like, when you think about it and you actually put it in context, it's like, damn, that's a fucking long way to go.
Yeah.
Here we go with another perfect example.
Yeah.
I bet you there's not a single person who appreciates how fucking physically demanding what Eddie has just done truly is.
Yeah.
One, he ran for multiple days.
Yeah.
This wasn't a couple hours. This wasn't run there, drop her off, come back in the same day.
This is like marathon. This is like marathon running too. This isn't just like you run a 100-yard dash and whatever.
Nope.
Like, no, this is going to be like, okay, yeah, you may ebb and flow a little bit and like slow down to catch your breath and like, you know, muster up to the next burp. But like overall, you're going to be, for miles, you're going to be basically running a good portion of that.
Yep.
And not just that, but pushing
An old wheelchair.
an old
with someone
like,
in it.
Yeah, like 100, probably close to a 100-pound wheelchair, and then you have someone inside of it. And you're also not doing this on solid ground, right? You're doing it on a beach. So you're not. I don't know. Like, it's not like you're just going up Fifth Avenue and going on a nice paved road that might be easier. So yeah, I definitely can imagine the.
Yeah, and he was taking breaks and everything like that. We know that it was multiple days because on their first night together, Odetta and Eddie slept together.
Yeah.
So we know that there was at least one night for sure
Yeah.
break.
Yeah.
So yes, you're sleeping in between, but let's be perfectly honest. If I'm going to go run a race, and let's be even more brutally honest, I'm in no shape to run a race. I'm not. I haven't ran like distance for years.
Yeah.
Imagine being pulled out of your life into this situation. Just the running, where you have to go up and down the beach 3 times. Down once, back a second time.
Yeah.
Or down a second time. That is going to be physically demanding. Your legs, your back, and it's not just running. You're pushing something.
Yeah, as I say, it's like when you like move or you help someone move, or like you do something at work that's just like way more physical than your normal job might entail, and it doesn't feel that bad at the time, but then like the next day or the next number of days,
Yeah.
you know, you're feeling it. Like, yeah, I think most of us have been there, and like that's what I think of with Eddie here is it's like, the poor bastard, like, and he's not done yet.
Right.
And in fact, you know, Roland is not as small as Odetta is, so it's
actually my next note here.
The harder part is going to be, so are we into subchapter 12 then?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You said this is your next note, so.
Oh, okay. So he offered no disagreement because he was simply too weary to go on without rest, but he had hoped to get further. The weight, that was the big problem. Compared to Odetta, pushing Roland was like pushing a load of iron bars. Eddie slept 4 more hours before dawn, woke with the sun coming up over the eroded hills, which were all that remained of the mountains, and listened to the gunslinger coughing. It was a weak cough full of rails, the cough of an old man who may be coming down with pneumonia. Their eyes met. Roland's coughing spasm turned into a laugh. I'm not done yet, Eddie, no matter how I sound. Are you? So I love that.
Yeah.
Like, I also find it interesting because Roland doesn't laugh a lot. And
No.
I feel like even in the last little bit here, we've seen him laugh a couple times. So it's like, it makes me wonder, is he like,
He's delirious.
yeah, is he getting punchy because of the illness here? Because we don't, I just think in general, his nature is not to laugh. Like, you know, it just does. Like Eddie's, I think his nature is to laugh and to make people laugh, and Roland's is just not that. So to see him laughing so much, like, makes me wonder, like, you okay there, dude? Yeah, that's, I don't know. It just, it makes me laugh because, like, I don't know. I'm a laugher, but like, yeah, Roland is definitely not. So I just can't even picture it. Like,
Yeah.
I've always had a hard time picturing Roland laughing or even smiling in some cases. Like, I just have like the man with no name image in my head, and like there really isn't a whole lot of smiling involved in those movies. So, yeah, what do you got next?
Right after that, Eddie. So Eddie, no matter how I sound, are you? I'm not done yet, Eddie. No matter how I sound, are you? Eddie thought of Odetta's eyes and shook his head. Not done, but I could use a cheeseburger and a bud. Bud, the gunslinger said doubtfully, thinking of apple trees and the spring flowers of the royal court gardens. So another little, not only fish out of water that we've proclaimed to love. I know that this is a book club episode, so maybe people are listening that haven't listened to all of our roundtables. One of the things that we absolutely love is Roland's fish out of water stuff.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's always great to me.
It's so great in all iterations of it, film, book. It's great. So here's another example. We know perfectly well that Eddie's talking about Budweiser.
Yeah.
A Bud Light Budweiser. Maybe even a Budweiser with lime. Who knows? No, I'm just kidding. No one likes that. And so after that, Eddie says, never mind, hop in, my man. No 4 on the floor, no T-top, but we're going to roll some miles just the same. And then down a little bit after a break, they got woken up by a cat. Eddie says, you ready? Eddie asked. He got slowly to his feet, grinning with pain. Are you? Roland asked again, very softly. Eddie twisted his back, producing a series of pops like a string of tiny firecrackers. Yeah, but I could really get behind that cheeseburger. I thought chicken was what you wanted. Eddie groaned. Cut me a break, man.
And that's definitely a good because that's what he was claiming with door number 2.
I just want to get a bucket of KFC.
Yeah. I do like that. That's a good one. Good throwback to some earlier lines there.
And the fact that Roland just does that little jab, that reminds me so much of you. Because we've had cases like this in our friendship where it's been like we'll be working somewhere and it's like, man, I'm really craving like there's a restaurant here called The Pie, the pizza place. It's really good pizza, but it's kind of far away from our houses. There's a couple locations, but they're all quite a drive away. So there'll be a day where like I'll be talking to Tad and I'll be like, God damn, I'm craving some pie. And he's like, oh yeah, that would be good. Nothing for 3 hours. And then it's like he texts me and goes, what'd you end up eating? Oh, I made this. And he goes, huh. Sends me a picture of him at the fucking pie or something. And it's like, God damn it, dude. You know right where to like put the dagger and twist.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The worst.
It's my superpower.
Your villain power.
Oh, I don't know about that. That's your opinion, man.
Hashtag Tad is terrible.
And then down here a little bit further, it says the third door was in plain view by the time the sun cleared the hills. 2 hours later, they reached it. All together again, Eddie thought, ready to drop to the sand, but that was apparently not so because there was no sign of Odetta Holmes, no sign at all. So, as one would expect, especially in a Stephen King novel, that if something can go wrong,
it will.
It's probably best to assume that it will.
No, if something here's a normal novel. If something can go wrong, it will. Harry Potter, Hunger Games.
I mean, that's
any of those like classic multiple book series. You're gonna have things that go wrong in the individual book.
Yeah, because
then you're gonna have things that go wrong in the wider story.
Yeah, because that's like what makes drama, right? Like I'm definitely not poo-pooing, and yeah, it's obviously
but
normal,
here's how King does it.
I feel like he does it way worse though.
Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, and then on top of that, your main character's gonna lose 2 fucking fingers to a lobstrosity.
You can't get over that.
No, I will never let that go. Fucking hell.
What is this now? A decade or so in, and you're still bitching about
decade and a half. 2003 or so is when you had me read Salem's Lot. I was starting the Gunslinger right around the time we graduated in 2004. A decade and a half later, yes, it still fucking gets to me.
Yeah, and me, I'm just like, I was pissed at first, but I'm like, I'll get over it. He can, whatever. But yeah, you take it way more personal, that's for sure.
That's just how.
So number lucky 13, what do you got here?
Odetta! Eddie screamed, and now his voice was broken and hoarse as the voice of Odetta's other had been. There wasn't even an echo in return, something he might at least have mistaken for Odetta's voice. These low, eroded hills would not bounce sound. There was only the crash of the waves, much louder in the tight arrowhead of land, the rhythmic, hollow boom of surf crashing at the end of some tunnel it had dug in the friable rock, and the steady keening of the wind. Odetta! This time he screamed so loudly his voice broke, and for a moment something sharp, like a jag of fishbone, tore at his vocal cords. His eyes scanned the hills frantically, looking for the lighter patch of brown that would be her palm, looking for movement as she stood up, looking, God forgive him, for bright splashes of blood on roan-colored rocks. Then,
Yeah,
yeah, I got to keep going. I forgot. He found himself wondering what he would do if he saw that last, or found the revolver now with deep tooth marks driven into the smooth sandalwood of the grips. The sight of something that might drive him into hysteria, might even run him crazy. But he looked for it or something just the same. His eyes saw nothing. His ears brought not the faintest returning cry. So that's where you can, like, me being the emotional one that I am, can pull myself back from being mad at Eddie earlier.
Yeah.
I can say, goddamn, now I get it. Like, dude's done. Like, there is no coming back when you're that far.
Yeah.
With someone.
Yeah.
So, like, for him to come back and this is the worst possible outcome. Not the body, not the missing, and there she is over there hurt, or not even her just sitting there, but just nothing. Just gone.
Yeah.
It's so much worse not knowing. I mean, me and you, we're a fan of true crime, and it's been said, families look for closure.
Yeah.
A missing person, especially like a missing child, it just hurts.
There was one here in Utah that the husband most likely murdered the wife, eventually killed the kids sometime later. But like there was even just that was how long? 10 years or so ago now.
Oh, geez, has it really been that long?
Yeah, and this last summer there was actually people going to investigate some mine shafts where they think that he may have dumped the body because like
her body, not theirs.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting thing that he took the family out and came back without her. So everyone suspects him, and then later on they started to get closer and closer to him, and he just reacted violently and took his own life and his kid's life.
Yeah, that was much later, and while he was a suspect and stuff, it was pretty crazy. But yeah, so but it's just crazy that 10 years later, there's still people going out to
still looking,
still looking,
try and put closure on it.
Yeah, because it is important to a lot of people. I mean, there's a lot of people that have lost people that try to like get connection to a serial killer, because they would almost feel better to know that like, oh, my sister or my daughter was killed by Ted Bundy versus just not knowing. Because like there's a number of times he had claimed to have killed a lot more people, and in some cases gave details about locations and stuff, and in some cases even that gives more closure because it is something. It's not.
It's something to go off of it. You can move on, you can wrap it up and close that chapter and move on, but it's the not knowing. Yeah, and that's where Eddie's at right here, and that's it, dude. That's gotta be so terrible.
It's like the dissociative fugue that I brought up for you.
Don't bring that up again. Was that on a book club or was that on a round table?
I can't remember.
Let's talk about it real fast, because if it was on a round table, I want the book club listeners.
Yeah,
it's so terrible.
In a nutshell, it's just basically like somebody will just snap and they'll basically just turn into someone else mentally, and like they will
walk away from their life.
And in a lot of there's been cases where people have gone on, moved to another town, had another family, and then one day snapped back to person A and walked out on the second family and went, why the fuck am I living in Kentucky all of a sudden?
I grew up in Illinois.
And they go back to where they came from, find their family, and it's been a decade and a half. And that it's crazy. And I don't think it's very common, but it's probably one of the most terrifying ideas in psychology, to just basically lose yourself and just basically break into something else completely. And of course I brought it up, and Peter the Family Man
told my wife. She was not happy with you. She was not happy with me either.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was not good.
You're supposed to be the buffer.
Yeah.
Is that the case?
It's that meme where I'm outstretched receiving all of Tad's horrible jokes and it doesn't hit her. The best part is that now that she's gotten used to you over the 7 years that we've been married, that it's to the point now where it's like, okay, I gotta show her. It's Tad humor.
just see that like pain as she like gets whatever horrible thing that I've sent, whatever horrible meme I've sent you.
The thing is that it's not necessarily pain anymore. I'm so proud of her. She's getting to the point where it's like me and you. It's not necessarily pain. It's just that's inappropriate. You've removed it. You've ripped it out. That humanity is gone.
Kalima,
yeah, you just ripped it out of our chest, and now it's just inappropriateness. We still react to it, but it's not necessarily like pain anymore.
Yeah.
Sometimes you still get us though.
So next up I've got here is just the next thing. It says the gunslinger, meanwhile, had been studying the third door He had expected a single word, the word that the man in black had used as he turned the 6th tarot card into the dusty Golgotha, where they had held palaver. Death, Walter had said, but not for you, gunslinger. There was not one word read upon the door, but 2, and neither of them was death. He read it again, lips moving soundlessly, the pusher. So that's actually a reveal for us as an audience, because we haven't, when Eddie saw it and Eddie and Odetta saw it, they saw it, but they didn't tell us, the audience, what they were seeing.
Yeah.
They saw it, they were looking at it, they even debated a little bit about what it meant, but like we were not clued into it.
Nope.
So that's good to finally get because I hate that kind of thing. I think I even mentioned it when we were in that spot of the book club, the last one when they were at that door. So I'm like, God damn it, show me what it fucking says.
Yeah.
That kind of shit like annoys me. So these payoffs where we finally get what it is, it makes me happy. But and the pusher, like it's I don't know, that's a provocative thing to say for sure. Because what came to my head initially is more, especially like thinking back to before when we didn't see what it was. Obviously Odetta has a pusher in her life, someone that pushed her literally in front of her, but also Eddie being an addict. There's pusher is often a term given to someone that's pushing something like drugs to someone, like that's a phrase I've heard anyway. I don't know if it's as widely used, but I think it is. I don't think it's like a regional thing by any means, but like there are people that push narcotics and they can be called pushers. So like for me, like thinking back, I don't know what it would mean to Roland, but thinking what it means for the other two that were staring at it and kind of getting some chills about like its implications, like, it would potentially mean something to both of them. And I just remember having that kind of connection in my mind. And then yet it means death, Roland thought, and knew it was so. So he does understand that it does still mean death. So that it's cool to finally have that reveal. What do you got next?
Next line. What made him look around was the sound of Eddie's voice moving away. Eddie had begun to climb the first slope, still calling Odetta's name. For a moment, Roland considered just letting him go. I wanted to notate that because I wanted to come back to that. So Roland considering just letting Eddie go, looking for.
Okay. So next up, a little bit further down here, kind of middle of a paragraph, it says, he was a romantic in his own harsh way. We're talking about Roland here. Yet he was also a realist enough to know that sometimes love actually did conquer all. As for himself, even if he was able to get the drugs from Eddie's world, which had almost cured him before, would they be able to cure him this time or even make a start? He was now very sick, and he found himself wondering if perhaps things had gone too far. His arms and legs ached, his head thudded, his chest was heavy and full of snot. When he coughed, there was a painful grating on his left side, as if his ribs were broken there. His left ear flamed. Perhaps he thought the time had come to end it, to just cry off. And then here I think is an interesting thing, because I think it's very indicative of him as a character. At this, everything in him rose up in protest. And I think that, like, if nothing else, with just a couple words there, King gave us almost a really, really good window into Roland. Because I think we've been kind of doing detective work for Roland's character now for a book and 3/4, and I think that I think he's a complex enough character that we're probably going to still be learning about him for a good long while. But it's just, I find it interesting this far in to still find something that is so central to him, but I don't know that it's even been conveyed in this way before. Like, I think we've gotten that he's tenacious and stuff, but even back to the very first chapters of the first book, like he's a tenacious motherfucker. But like this, to like that, it's almost like that every even down to the strains of his DNA are crying out against like that thought of crying off. Is like that just says a lot. That it's like it's not just a mental thing. Like it's almost like it's his entire being is like rejects that, and I think that's a visceral explanation of kind of who Roland is, and I maybe one of my favorite things that we've read in a good while here in this book, and I love this book, but again, I'm a huge Roland fan, and I think that it's in just a couple words there, it just gives us a really very clear image of him.
Yeah, and on top of that, the next line, Eddie, he cried, and there's no cough now. His voice was deep and powerful. So even like that goes further into what you're talking about, is that it's not necessarily just a mental thing. It's also just like his whole physical being as well. because he's able to take out. I mean, he's describing the symptoms of pneumonia here, for God's sake.
Yeah.
And phlegmy cough, which is something that I know all about because I've been sick now since I got back, which is over 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And it's just the congestion in my chest. I just can't get rid of it. It's
Yeah.
the cough. It's
dude. Like, last time I got a really bad cold was, I think it was back in January, and I can't remember if it affected the show at all. But I remember, like, I missed an entire week of work. And I actually ended up going to like not an emergency room, but like an Instacare type thing, because I was just basically like, I don't know what the fuck this is, but like I've had a lot of colds in my life, and this is like terrible. And it, like it was like really phlegmy and really bad. Like I don't know. It turned out to just basically be an upper respiratory infection, which is basically a cold. But it's one of the worst I'd ever had. And yeah, the whole phlegmy thing, like it's like the worst. Like I was like, it's like usually when you're sick, there's like one aspect that you latch onto where it's just like, I could handle the rest of it if it wasn't for this thing.
The sore throat or the runny nose.
Yeah.
Or
there's usually one thing, and you could have the same illness 10 times and have 10 different things, but there's usually one that you focus in on, and like, the mucus and like having buildup in like your chest is like the worst.
It just feels like someone's sitting on your chest. You're trying to breathe and everything like that. And so I know right here, like right now, if I was supposed to command and yell the way Roland does right now, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Like my voice just isn't there. It goes out. Like I work on the phones. I work at a call center. I have to talk a lot. End of the day, my voice is starting to has been strained the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
By the end of this podcast, it's going to be strained as well. But to think about not just yelling, but yelling in a commanding, not sounding sick way, I couldn't do it. I'm going to be a realist here. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
The fact that Roland was able to go to the brink there, just in thought, not actually like pulling his gun, putting it to his temple and going, should I, oh no, I shouldn't, put the hammer back, put the gun away. No, just a thought. Maybe I should give up. Just the instant, like, visceral reaction of that, where it seriously is like someone waved smelling salts under a guy that had been, semi-knocked out.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Like, instantly, like, I picture, like, Hulk Hogan, like, the old wrestler. Dude, no! Just, like, instantly, like, he Rolands up instantly. Like, he flares up like a fire.
Yeah, it's definitely a huge reaction from him. And Jack in the chat says, I had the same reaction to the pusher, meaning drug pusher. And that's good because, I don't think it gets brought up a lot. But yeah, that's definitely one that I thought of. And then Robert in the chat says, The Pusher is a great song, too, by UFO. I'm not sure if I'm familiar with that one. If I heard it, maybe I would be. But
that's
by name,
that's
I'm not
how
sure.
I am.
Yeah,
with music.
Yeah, I like what would you say? Like, it's like a passing familiarity. It's like at work sometimes somebody will be like, "Oh, so and so." I'm like, I don't know who that is. They're like, they've worked here for 4 years and you've worked here for 6. I'm like, okay. Then I probably know them by look, but I don't know their name to their look. Like, I work at a big place. There's a lot of different aspects to things, and there's times that there's streams I'll never cross streams with certain people ever. So I don't feel bad that I don't know people, but I think it's the same with music for me. Is there's just times where I'm just like, I don't know that song or I don't know that artist, but then like somebody will play like a couple songs, but oh, okay, no, I've heard that one before, maybe on a sports game or whatever, but like doesn't mean I would like know like, oh, that's the freaking whatever by the so-and-sos. Like, I don't know. That's like passing familiarity, I guess.
That's what drives my wife nuts is stuff like that for me. I don't know how I do it, but I just lock away sports knowledge. Like, she's like, we were watching your team play. Tad's favorite team is the Packers, by the way, on Thursday, and this guy popped up, and I'm like, oh, that's so and so. He went to this college. She's like, how the fuck do you know that? I was like, oh, I used to play Madden all the time, and it was on there. She's like, still, you haven't played Madden for like 4 years now. You quit that series. You stopped playing it so much. How is that still in your head? I'm like, oh, it's just there. It's just something that I do. It's just, I just remember people's names, but it's the weirdest damn thing. Putting a name with a face, I suck at it.
Yeah.
Remembering someone's name, I'm usually pretty good at it, especially if it's like a football player or like an actor. Me and you are both really big into movies, but we have our game that we used to play where we would link 2 actors together, kind of like the 7 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. You just name like Al Pacino to Robert De Niro, but don't use a movie that they played in together. And it's like, okay, so Godfather 2 is out. Let's use other movies to link these 2 guys together.
Yeah.
And so that's where I have that memory for that, but it's linking the name to the face. It's like, Tad? Who's Tad? Like, what do you mean, Tad? Like, Tad. Yeah, I know a Tad, but what do you mean?
Yeah. And then Robert in the chat says, props Peter by the way, for making it through a 3-hour episode a couple weeks ago. Yeah, 3.5 hours, man.
I have a 40-ounce water bottle that I drained, and Tad was nice enough to give me half of one of his water bottles to fill it back up part of the way.
Because I never know going in. I always kind of have a slight idea of how long an episode's going to be, but like I don't know for sure. Like there's just no way to know, especially with the way that we do things with tangents and stuff. But I kind of told you like it might be a longer episode.
I walked into the office and Tad goes, "It's gonna be a long one," and I just went, "All right."
But you made it.
Here we go.
So as Robert said, props to you for that.
You.
You did you did indeed make it through that one, which is one of the longest we've ever done. I don't know if it's the longest. I swear we had one that was nigh on 4 hours.
Yeah.
We
talked about this a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, but I don't recall exactly, but I think that we may have at least one more longer. But it's certainly one of the longest in a good while, probably. So yeah, props to you for getting through that with illness.
I remember the face of my father.
Yeah, indeed. And then Jack says, yeah, I'm much more audio visual based than remembering the names of a place or a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
It seems like it's a very common thing though. Like it's a lot of people are this way that I find out is like, but when it comes to like just like certain things, it's like, hey, do you remember that restaurant that we went to 10 years ago? And Ted's like, dude, I don't remember what I had for breakfast. Like, come on. Like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
But then as soon as they start telling a story.
Yeah.
Like, Tad.
Dude, there's been times I've been like, oh, I've never seen this movie before. And like 3/4 of the way, and I'm like, oh my God, I've seen this before. Like a scene will hit me where I'm just like, I have seen this before. And then suddenly it'll like click, and I'll be like, I know how this is going to end. And like, but like I went through 2/3 of the movie or 3/4 of the movie without realizing that, dude, you've seen this before.
Yep.
I mean, it even happened to me recently with Mindhunter. So somehow I was going to watch the new season, and I guess I had started a rewatch on the first season.
It did it to you too?
And so like I was like watching it, I'm just like, oh, okay. And I'm like, but I didn't do a rewatch, so I wasn't super familiar. I don't have a granular memory of everything from season 1. It's been a couple years now, right? So I was like watching stuff and the episode's going, and then like there was something I'm like, God, that's weird. That was like a line like he said last year and the previous season. Yeah. And then suddenly there was a scene, and it was almost all the way through the episode with the main character and his girlfriend. And I was just like, the scene played out. I'm like, dude, why the fuck are they doing this scene again? Like, I've seen this goddamn scene before. Why would they, especially in the first episode. And it was also, it felt weird that it was jumping right in, but I'm like, whatever, it's different things creatively. Right. But then I was just like, wait a minute. After that scene, I'm like, no. And I backed out. And I realized it was like episode 5 of season 1. And I'd watched almost the whole episode. I'm like, are you fucking kidding me?
No, it did the same thing to me when I started season 2. When I went to go start it, it was seriously like midpoint of an episode. I'm like, oh, cool. They're doing the flashback, like recapping season 1. And I'm like, wow, they're doing this whole fucking scene, huh?
Yeah.
And then it stopped and went to the next scene. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? And I hit back, and it's like season 1, episode 3, and I'm like, the fuck?
Yeah, no, for me, it was like beginning of the episode, so I really thought it was just the start of the new first episode of the second season, and I watched almost the entire episode before I realized, like, wait, no, I've already seen this.
The thing is, I don't know, do you stream through your Xbox?
Yeah.
Okay, that's where I stream Netflix for me as well, as I stream it through my Xbox. So I go to Netflix, like right now, The Ranch, it's a Netflix exclusive show, just dropped a new part of its season that it does it in like 2 parts. Either way, it just dropped a new section. It instantly pulls up, ready to play that section. So Netflix exclusives do that. So it's like, it doesn't matter if you're caught up or not. Right now, if you went to go watch The Ranch, I think it would most likely be like, here's the new section. You play it.
Oh, okay.
So I went to Mindhunter and I just hit play, put the remote down, popped open a soda pop, put my phone away, started drinking. I'm like, wow, they like really jumped right into this. It's one of the interviews with a serial killer that I'm in the middle of. And I'm like, okay, this makes sense. This is where we're going to get a feel for the show again.
Yeah.
They show the entire fucking rest of the interview, them driving away. And I'm like, God, they're just seriously like just like going off on this recap. Like, is this that important to season 2? Finally, after like 10, 15 minutes, I'm like, all right, I grab the remote, I hit back, and it's like season 1, episode 4. And I'm like, the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I would have caught it that early, but no, for me it was a lot further in before I realized the mistake. And then Robert in the chat says that he loves Mindhunter. Yeah, I would recommend that show to anyone. It's great show.
Anyone that likes drama, anyone that likes crime stuff, anyone that especially likes serial killers, watch Mindhunter.
But it's David Fincher. So, like, David Fincher is the man. Like, he doesn't do bad movies.
No.
I mean, even his first movie, Alien 3, some people shit on that movie, but I still think that's, like, a very underrated movie. Certainly, he doesn't have the same pizzazz of his later movies because studio interference and stuff, but still, I think he put together a great movie. I always called, like, the Alien trilogy, Alien, Aliens, and Alien 3. I love that trilogy. I think it's a great trilogy. Does the third stand up to the same as the first two? No, but is it a great watch?
Is anything going to ever stand up to the first 2 of that series?
Yeah,
I mean,
no
come
kidding.
on.
And Tywin Lannister's in the third one. Doing a rewatch recently. I was like, that's Tywin Lannister.
Like, holy shit.
Oh, yeah. So next up, a little bit further down here.
Sorry. Tangents.
Yeah, exactly. It says, it's all right. Go on through and get the stuff you need. We'll both be here when you get back. I doubt that. I have to find her. Eddie looked at Roland, and his gaze was very young and completely naked. I mean, I have to. I understand your love and your need, the gunslinger said, but I want you to come with me this time, Eddie. And Eddie stared at him for a long time and tried to credit what he was hearing. Come with you, he said, at last bemused. Come with you. Holy God, now I think I really have heard everything. Deedle, Dumpkin, everything. Last time you were so determined I was going to stay behind that you were willing to take a chance on me cutting your throat. This time you want to take a chance on something ripping hers right out. That may well have already happened, Roland said, although he knew it hadn't. The lady might be hurt, but he knew she wasn't dead. So that, yeah, what was your thought on this? Like, I guess, like, can you remember the first time or even just whatever with this, because this is a pretty big turn, as Eddie's alluding to.
For sure. I think that the big thing is that I it's not unsurprising to me a little bit, but at the same time, when I look at it from a different point of view, it's very surprising. So logistically speaking, this makes a lot of sense for Roland to bring Eddie because he needs help in the other world.
Okay.
He needs a guide. It makes sense, especially since Roland is sick. He needs someone that can help him. You need to go here. You need to say this. You need to give him that. You're going to get medicine. Like, walk into a pharmacy. I need this medicine. Give me money.
Yeah. Okay, so you
that's what I picture.
You
but at the
expected
same time,
to have him actually go all the way through, because like we didn't really see Roland come through the door except for one time. Every other time he's in the person's head.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying.
So
it's
you're saying have
Roland takes over.
Oh, you're saying
the person.
Okay, okay. I thought you meant like Eddie go fully through the door to where he would be back in New York, and then he could run all the errands while Roland used the body to do whatever he needed.
No, I'm picturing them both going through into the person, the subject, and Eddie being in there telling him where to go and what to do.
Okay.
Because that's where Roland goes.
Yeah,
maybe it is just Roland that does that. So Eddie would come through and basically guide the Roland bot with him.
Yeah. To
where he needs to go, say for him what he needs to do and everything like that.
Yeah.
And help him. At the same time, Roland's body gets left behind. So it's just, that's where my mind went, is Roland's body's going to get left behind. If Eddie goes with him, Eddie's body's going to get left behind.
Yeah.
And that's where the other side of it came in for me is, well, we know what the fuck's going on with Odetta.
Yeah. We're like Roland. We're
pretty sure whatever can go wrong in a King novel will go wrong.
Yeah.
That kind
of thing. The second he left her with the gun and walked away, as a reader, yeah, if you're unless this is your second Stephen King novel, you're pretty aware of most likely what's going to happen with that.
And we promise not to spoil things. It's literally on the next page where they talk about it. So we're not getting ahead of ourselves either. Literally, Roland and Eddie are having a conversation right now that leads to them discussing why Odetta is not there at the door with them.
Yeah.
And why she's not dead.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that in a second. But basically, my second train of thought along the first line, that both bodies are just going to be left behind. What the fuck are you thinking? You know she's going to come down. You know she's just going to slit, off you go, bye-bye, story over. It drives me nuts to think about that, but that makes a little bit more sense that if Eddie would go through,
Like
then
all the way through.
to
where he would exist
his body
in New York
wouldn't-
City.
His body wouldn't
I
be
mean,
left behind.
presumably.
Right.
If the two have given us any indication, it's going to be New York City in some time period. So Eddie can go through and be in there, which again, like, I think comes back to Eddie's bemusement here, is that's a lot of risk for Roland. And, he basically put his neck on the line, quite literally, to avoid letting Eddie have that I don't know, temptation the last time. So the fact that he's welcoming him now is one that kind of strikes you a little bit, where it's like, wow, really? Like,
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's pretty crazy.
It's a complete 180 for him.
Yeah.
I mean, he was so like Eddie said, dude, I was willing to cut your throat and you still went.
Yeah.
Like, and now you want me to go with you. I think a large part of it is that Eddie's not going through withdrawals this time.
Yeah.
I think he's past that, and with Odetta, he's trying to keep him from going off, because if he goes off, Odetta's just gonna fucking blow him away. Like, that's not Odetta, Detta. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's just not even a question. He's gonna go out there traipsing around in the hills and everything like that, even if Roland gives him a gun. Detta's gonna be sitting somewhere in an ambush, waiting for him to get close enough. Pop. Eddie's down.
Yeah.
So if you send Eddie out with the gun, then she's going to have 2 guns and Roland has no guns. Or you send Eddie out with no gun, so he's for sure going to die. And then it's still Detta with a gun, Roland with a gun, Roland very sick and not able to perform as well as he usually does with the gun.
Yeah.
So that's where it comes down to. Plus, Roland has to go through the door.
Yeah.
So that's where it comes to a point where it's like, it is very confusing to me the very first time I read it. I'm like, why the fuck does he want him to go? Wouldn't he want him to stand watch at the door?
Yeah.
To protect his body? Like, to me, that's what makes sense. But they get into it here to explain it a little bit further on.
Yeah, and Jack in the chat says, I wonder if Roland would have wanted to take Eddie if he hadn't given the gun away. I imagine not.
That would be an interesting conversation, because if Eddie hadn't given the gun away and he came back with it, and they come back and Odetta is gone, well, then they still have 2 guns, but
she's far less of a threat at that point.
She's far less of a threat. Eddie can stay there, stay on guard with 2 guns versus no guns.
Yeah.
Roland can go through and do his business.
Yeah.
Or Eddie comes through with both guns, because we saw that Roland's able to bring them through.
Yeah.
Balazar's, they use it to fight. But so Roland enters the pusher, whoever this is, we haven't got there yet, and Eddie comes through carrying both of Roland's revolvers. Now all you have is Roland's body on the beach with no guns.
Yeah.
Leaving it vulnerable to Detta to come down with a rock and just beat his fucking brains in.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think he's kind of certain of that almost with taking him through, because I think I remember just being kind of perplexed, not even necessarily from like the idea of like allowing Eddie the temptation, but just the fact of like, wait, you're not gonna like let him guard you because you're just going to be an unconscious body next to a door. If you guys both are to go through, that's what's going to be there. So like, it just seemed weird to me strategically, where it's just like, don't you want him on this side, even if she has a gun, to guard you? But I don't know. Yeah, it's definitely a strange one. But going on here, what's your next note?
So I kind of wanted to summarize this, unless you have an objection to this. There's a big, long argument here between Eddie and Roland. There's a lot here for us to go through. There's individual things that I want to talk about, but for the most part, I kind of want to just summarize it.
Okay.
On the whole, is that Eddie doesn't realize what Detta has. And that's not a gun loaded with potential misfires. Roland proves it to him that it is a gun loaded with most likely the best bullets that were left.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why Roland told him to bring it back.
Yeah.
So the big thing here is that Eddie's not trusting Roland to get close, because Roland's going to grab him and force him through the door. I never really understood that part. Roland is so sick that I don't think he could overpower Eddie to do it.
Well, how much is he is sick, certainly, but is he as sick as he's making out? has he been planning the whole time since Eddie returned to him to look a certain way so that in a situation such as having to grab him and overpower him and bring him to the door, that he could do that? Because Eddie doesn't suspect he's that
True.
weak, right?
True. There is a line here later on that goes over that Roland's faking a little bit, but not enough that he could actually overpower Eddie.
Yeah.
But basically what it comes down to, what I'm trying to summarize here, is that Eddie doesn't want to get close to Roland, so they're yelling at each other across the beach.
Yeah.
And
I do want to say one thing
go.
is the argument here as they are having it, especially like because Eddie's basically trying to say like this, like one thing, and no matter what Roland gives to him logically, he has some answer for it.
Yeah.
The only thing I could think, as the vindictive prick that I am,
Yeah.
isn't he doing the exact same fucking thing that he was getting pissed at Odetta for? No matter what logic and reality is fed to him, he has some fucking excuse as to why it's not the case. Some fucking long, convoluted mental gymnastics to get around it. You know what I mean? Like, think about how ridiculous some of his arguments get here as their argument. So, like, for me, again, it's like more of a Roland side.
Hypocrite.
And I'm just like, you motherfucking hypocrite. You're doing the same shit you were getting really fucking pissed at Odetta for a couple, 20, 30 pages ago.
To prove Tad's point, the very first thing they discuss is that we didn't hear a gunshot, Roland says. Maybe you heard a gunshot while I was asleep. It would have woken you. Not as tired as I am, man. I fell asleep. It's like being dead, the gunslinger said in the same mild voice. I know the feeling. I wanted to throw that line in there because I love the little jab that he's like, dude, I'm fucking dying. Stop this.
Yeah.
Then you understand, but it's not being dead. Last night you were out just like that, and one of those cat screeched. You were awake and on your feet in seconds. Because you're concerned for her, there was no gunshot, Eddie, and you know it. You would have heard it because of your concern for her. So maybe she brained it with a rock.
Yeah. He just keeps going with like the,
Yep.
and it just gets more and more absurd because he refuses to like accept reality basically. So it's just funny to me, and a credit to King as a writer, because I think that is like reality.
Yeah.
Like as much as some people create characters and they do make them I don't know, there's a lot of people that don't make hypocrite characters unless that's the only thing they are is hypocrites. So to make a closer to a lead character a hypocrite is an interesting thing, and I just think it's something that doesn't happen all the time. I'm not saying it's like 100% unique to King, but it is something that's a little bit more unique, and I think it credits the writer that King is to give us something like that. But yeah, it is funny when you kind of fold it back on that conversation with Odetta and you start to realize like, dude, Eddie, you're doing the exact same thing. Yep. So, all right, but go on. You were, and I love the Little Red Riding Hood references.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I'm
about to get to one of those. Something grabbed her all right. The gunslinger said, "Well, thank God, getting sick and hasn't driven all the sense out of your." And we both know that what it was. Detta Walker. That's what grabbed her. Eddie opened his mouth, but for some little time, only sounds, but enough of them so both acknowledged the truth. The gunslinger, inexorable face bore all of his arguments to silence. It doesn't have to be that way. So again, back to your thing that he's just, ignoring the facts.
Yeah.
Come a little closer. If we're going to talk, let's talk. Every time I have to shout at you over the waves, it rips another piece of my throat out. That's how it feels anyway. What big eyes you have, Grandma, Eddie said, not moving. What in the hell's name are you talking about? A fairy tale, Eddie said.
Oh, yeah, that cracks me up. And it goes on here as we go on a little bit further here. We're going to get more of those as Roland is trying to coax him over to capture him.
And right after this, we get the confirmation that indeed Detta has taken over Odetta. Again, she's sitting off.
Yes, it's nearly 150 yards above them and perhaps a full quarter mile to the east. Dark eyes full of intelligence, as they were lacking in human mercy, watched this tableau intensely. It was impossible to tell what they were saying. The wind and the waves and the hollow crashes of surf digging its underground channel saw to that, but Detta didn't need to hear what they were saying to know what they were talking about. So yeah, and not that there's any surprise. There was only one way this is going to go. So this just puts a cherry on it that this is indeed what's going on.
Yeah, and while we're in her head, this is something that it has to be brought up. She still didn't like to think about how he had been, talking about Roland controlling her, how it had felt, how easily he had overridden all her clawing efforts to push him out, away, to take control of herself again. That had been awful, terrible. And what had made it worse is the lack of understanding. What exactly was the real source of her terror? That it wasn't the invasion itself was frightening enough. She knew she might understand if she examined herself more closely, but she didn't want to do that. Such examination might lead her to a place like the one sailors had feared in the ancient days, a place where no more or less than the edge of the world, a place the cartographers had marked with the legend, "Here there be serpents." The hideouts thing,
Hideous.
hideous?
Yeah.
Oh, the hideous things about the really bad man's invasion had been the sense of familiarity that came with it, as if this amazing thing had happened before. Not once, but many times, but frightening or not, she had denied panic. So that's where it's like, damn, like we were getting into the deep psychology of Detta and
Yeah,
Odetta.
yeah, I had that highlighted too. Yeah, because it's interesting that basically she doesn't, like, she's afraid for internal examination, and I think that we've kind of discussed this before. Like, that would almost be a requirement for both characters here, because, like, for the symbiotic relationship of, like, let's not destroy this, we both got to just believe that we are our own thing and there's no crossover and there's no missing time.
Right.
They both cover missing time, but another part of that's going to be is not to look too closely back at yourself, what is it, never mind the man behind the curtain type thing, because if either of them, they're both obviously intelligent, if either of them were to analyze things, they would start to discover things like missing time. Like, I don't think that it's that deeply removed from their mind, that I think if they really did do some self-examination, they would understand those things, and then they would start to maybe even understand some of, like, what she is here.
Yeah.
She's understanding, like, there's a familiarity involved with Roland, with his essence taking over her. And if she was to examine that, it would probably lead her to unraveling the whole thing, right? It's like with the sweater, you have a little string on it and you pull it and the whole freaking thing comes apart. Like, that could happen if you go into further inspection, and she doesn't want to do that.
Yeah, and that's the part that I was just going to read one more time. She might understand it if she examined herself more closely, but she didn't want to do that. And that's where it's just like,
Yeah.
for someone who's going through something like this, definitely is a point where you have to do that. Acceptance is the first step. And
Yeah.
you have a problem, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Is it? And so, along those lines, Jack says in the chat, I find King is amazing at using characteristics and mannerisms, example, hypocrisy, to give that feeling of realism.
Yeah.
And it's something like that.
And I feel like that's the ultimate, like, achievement of King, regardless of what you read of his, whether it's his horror, whether it's his fantasy, whether it's sci-fi, whether it's romance, whether like, he's written like everything. But I think, like, the one thing that is there across the board is the realism of people. And I think that's what almost even makes his horror more horrifying, is the realism of it. Like, you look at something like The Mist, or you look at something like Misery, like, those are real things. Like, that's not just like, a monster. I mean, Mist, there is there's monsters.
Well, no, but the real monster,
the real
the real
terror
monster
is a
in the
person.
Mist is not a monster that's outside
Yeah,
in the mist.
Yeah.
It's the I don't want to say fanaticism or the religiousness of that lady, but it's the reaction to a stressful situation.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all heard of horror stories. I mean, you want an example of people who got swept up in something? I mean, just look at Jamestown.
Yeah, or the Salem witch trials.
Salem witch trials.
Yeah.
I mean, even like things like what's the one in Texas that you always talk about the federal government?
Oh,
being
Waco.
Waco. They got swept up in doing the right thing and ended up killing a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Like, by doing the right thing. Oh, they're going to react this way if we do this. No, they're not.
Yeah.
Like, don't push people, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Jamestown, I've done a little bit. I started diving into Jamestown. I couldn't do it. It was just too painful for someone like me, who has a family, who has a wife, who has a 6-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And a son and everything like that. It's just too much to think about those kinds of things that wrong. It's so much easier being like, oh, it's a faceless killer. It's a serial killer. That's something completely different. Jamestown is about, like, people doing it to their own families.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. And that's just,
yeah.
that's so hard. And the thing that makes King so good is that things like that are in his novels. Like that woman in the mist reminds me of like Jamestown and
some of those
more
just
like
the horrific stuff.
Up the Holocaust. Like people going along with it, even though it's a fucking horrible thing.
Yeah.
Extreme situations put people into a predicament where it's like, what am I going to do? Oh my God, this is so terrible. And then someone's like, we should do this. Normal, sane people, not in a stressful situation, would be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Get the fuck out of here. That's insane.
Yeah.
But in a stressful situation, it's like, that's a great idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's do that. And that's where Stephen King is really good at doing that to you. That he puts these characters in such stressful situations and gives them the mannerisms of real people that you can relate to them, that sometimes they make stupid ass decisions.
Yeah.
But you can kind of understand where they're coming from because they feel so real. Other times it's like it's a horror movie kind of thing.
Yeah, where it's
don't go in there. What the fuck are you thinking?
Yeah, it's like,
don't go in there.
Yeah,
you're
like
so dumb.
2-dimensional characters and like just Bond villains that are like super mustache twirling and stuff.
Cat petting.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's not talk about let's not talk about Blofeld here. How dare you, sir?
Denim wearing, boot walking kind of guys.
No, I'm just talking like the mustache twirler. I'm gonna nuke the center of the world and like whatever. Like,
or nuke Las Vegas.
Okay, so then it goes on here. It says she had observed even as she fought and remembered looking into the door when the gunslinger used her hands to pivot the wheelchair towards it. She remembered seeing the body of the really bad man lying on the sand with Eddie crouched above it, knife in hand. And then a little bit further down, he hadn't, or because it's talking about Eddie potentially killing the really bad man. He hadn't, but she had seen the really bad man's body. It had been breathing, but the body was the right word, just the same. It had only been a worthless thing, like a cast-off Tosek, which was some idiot had stuffed full of weeds or corn shucks. Which, yeah, I mean, we've seen that now a few times in the book, where it's like, yeah, it's it's basically a body. It's not a living organism anymore. So yeah, it's the interesting thing here though is she's piecing this together. And then a little bit here at the very end of the thing, it says subchapter says, but she was jerked from the rat run of her thoughts by the sound that came clearly in spite of the surf and the wind, the heavy crack of a pistol shot. So that certainly takes her out of because she kind of goes into a whole paragraph of pretty Data-like
it's
thought process.
Data rationalizing what Eddie's doing versus what Roland's doing. Eddie coming to look for her is him obviously not having his fill of hurting her and doing all those horrible things to her that she accused them of. And Roland's just trying to get the hell out of there because he's now scared of her and hurt.
Yeah. So into subchapter 15, what do you got in this subchapter?
So basically from the beginning, I think you understand better than you let on, Eddie said. A whole hell of a lot better. You'd like for me to get in grabbing distance, that's what I think. He jerked his head toward the door without taking his eyes from Roland's face. Unaware that not far away, someone was thinking exactly the same thing, he added. I know you're sick, all right, but it could be you're pretending to be a lot weaker than you really are. Could be you're laying back in the tall grass just a little bit. Could be I am, Roland said, unsmiling, and added, but maybe I'm not. He was, though, a little. And that's what I wanted to bring up, because that's what we were talking about. You brought it up before. Roland is pretending, but just a little bit. He really is weak.
Oh, he is sick and he's weak, but I think that he's definitely holding back a little bit, for sure, just a little bit.
And then it keeps going and says, a few more steps wouldn't hurt, though, would it? I'm not going to be able to shout too much longer. The last syllable turned into a frog's croak, as if to prove his point. And I need to make you think about what you're planning to do. If I can't persuade you to come with me, maybe I can at least put you on your guard. Again, little jab there to the one that you brought up, the night where he fell asleep when Roland told him not to.
Yeah.
For your precious tower, Eddie sneered. But he did come skittering halfway down the slope of ground he had climbed, his tattered tennies kicking up listless clouds of maroon dust. For my precious tower and for your precious health, the gunslinger said, not to mention your precious life. And this is where it goes further into it if we want to delve into the specifics. This is where he proves to him that And this was really hard for me to comprehend the first time. So I was misunderstanding what he was talking about, like the back of the belt being wetted the most. I don't know why, but the first time I read it, I pictured him being face down on the beach.
Yeah.
So it took a little bit for me to be like, what the fuck is he talking about?
Yeah.
So basically, as stop me if I'm wrong here, because it still gets me. Roland was laying on his back when the water hit his boots.
Yeah.
So
we even have that famous picture of him sitting on the beach, right?
Yeah.
So just think there, he just lays back and
Right.
lays down from that sitting position of like one of the last images I always have in my head of book one. So yeah, from there he just lays down, but
Lays
then
back.
when the high tide comes in,
It hits boots first, up the legs to his guns, up to the belt around high on his waist because the guns sit low, up high to the bullets that are in his belt,
yeah,
and the ones on the sides and the ones in the back got the wettest.
yeah,
The ones near his buckle didn't. So what he proves here is that the gun that he has was loaded with bullets from the back, and it still fires. The bullets that are in Detta's guns were loaded from closer to the buckle.
yeah. So they're gonna be
So
better.
they're most likely going to fire.
Yeah,
It would be like 4 out of 6, 5 out of 6, while Roland's gun is 3 out of 6, 2 out of 6.
yeah,
Maybe even 1 out of 6 because he loaded
Yeah.
them from different places. So that's what he's really trying to get across to Eddie is that, hey, she's got a live gun up there. You're going to go traipsing up in the hills unarmed looking for her, and you know she's Detta.
yeah,
Like, that's fucking stupid.
yeah. I'm trying to, let me just find where the place is from that. Yeah, that's pretty much the long and short of it. And he basically gives the object lesson here by actually firing the gun to kind of, and after getting a couple dry fires, right, or on dead shells that were wetted too much. Let's see. And then it says when the first slug I pulled the trigger on fired, I almost filled my pants, the gunslinger said, and laughed again. Shocked, Eddie realized the gunslinger had reached the edge of delirium. The first slug, but believe me when I say it was the last thing that I expected. So there, I mean, even outside of the line, it's almost even more that center portion here where Eddie's kind of getting at what I was talking about earlier, that is Roland getting punchy here? Because, he's laughing an awful lot for someone that we pretty much almost didn't see laugh or smile for almost an entire book. So, did we even see him laugh or smile in the first book? Like, even when he's like with like Allie and stuff, like
Or
he's
Jake.
very stoic. He's very he is what he is, and like he's very matter of fact. Like, so yeah, I'd say we have a full book of him like without any sign of like human emotion in a lot of ways. So to go from that to this, where he's like giggling like the Joker, like suddenly it's like, like I don't know what's going on here, but it's definitely strange. And then the next little bit here, Eddie's like, he kind of thinking himself, he doesn't really know. He had only shot maybe a pistol a couple times before he got into the whole firefight at Balazar's. It says Henry might have known, but Henry was dead, and that and a thought which had a way of constantly surprising Eddie into grief. So again, just a little highlighter that the fact of his brother's death is still something that I don't want to say necessarily weighs heavy on him, but it's definitely a little
It still pops up into his head.
Yeah,
which is it's
with
so
with the reaction too. It's not just like my brother's dead. Like there's still an emotional reaction there, but I don't want to say that like it's like overwhelming him emotionally. But like when it does pop up, it kind of is a little dagger.
It was really interesting. I saw something on Reddit the other day talking about grief, where initially when something happens, you have a box, and in the box is a button. Then you have a ball that's a big ball bouncing around inside there. And every time it hits the button, you have the pain. And over time, the ball shrinks. So every now and then, it's going to come back and hit that button. That's what just happened to Eddie. That button got hit. He has that sudden realization, oh, Henry might have known. Oh. It literally had slipped his mind in everything that's going on and everything that he'd been through, all the physical exertion, everything like that his brother had died. And that came back right there. It's really interesting to see the complexity of Eddie going back to that moment of grief, even with everything that's going on. I mean, when you think about it for a second, Eddie's standing on a beach in a alternate dimension, another world. Who the hell knows where he is?
Yeah.
The future, we don't know. There's a man who's deathly ill who kidnapped him, sitting close by, that he thinks is going to kidnap him again and drag him through the door because the woman he loves is somewhere nearby with a loaded gun wanting to kill them because of her split personality disorder. Or multiple personality? What's the correct the correct
multiple
one now?
personalities, yeah.
They call it split personality.
Yeah, they say schizophrenia.
Schizophrenia in the book, right? Because it changed later on.
Yeah, I mean, schizophrenia was never the right term for it, but it was like
Right.
one of those like common usage was the incorrect usage.
Right. And so, with all of that going on, still has a moment to grieve for his dead brother.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, to me, that's one of the reasons why I love Eddie so much. Is he's such a big heart, such a good character, he seems like actually a good guy. So for this one, that was something I remember reading the first time, being like, oh damn, that's rough. I don't have a brother. You do. I don't have a brother, but I imagine that if I lost my sister, I have two sisters, one of my sisters in that way, yeah, it would still spring up on me like that.
Yeah.
Especially with all the shit that he's going through.
Yeah, exactly. And then a little bit further down here, after the gunshot and the whole thing here, at last he had heard his voice say, "You could have held back one shell you knew was live. I wouldn't put it past you." And with that said, he knew it was true. He wouldn't put that or anything past Roland, his tower, his goddamn tower, and the slyness of putting the saved shell in the third cylinder to prove that the right touch of reality, didn't it? Made it hard not to believe. We've got a saying in my world, Eddie said. That guy could sell Frigidaires to Eskimos. That's the saying. What does it mean? It means go pound sand. So, yeah. He just before this, Eddie basically said he wouldn't get any closer, because Roland's still trying to coax him closer, which is just hilarious to me because Eddie's so skittish about it, but at the same time, knowing the reality, he's right to be skittish. But yeah, it's definitely funny to see. What do you got next?
So two things. I want to go back just a little bit on here. Roland says that would have been very convincing, wouldn't it? Can you come a little closer, Eddie? Not convincing at all, Eddie said, and I think I'm just as close to you as I'm going to come, thanks. What lesson am I supposed to take from all of this, Roland? Roland looked at him as someone might look at an imbecile. I didn't send you out here to die, you know. I didn't send either of you out here to die. Great gods, Eddie. Where are your brains? She's packing live iron. His eyes regarded Eddie closely. She's somewhere up in those hills. Maybe you think you could track her, but you're not going to have any luck if she's on the ground. If the ground is as stony as it looks from here. She's lying up there, Eddie. Not Odetta, but Detta. Lying up there with live iron in her hands. If I leave you and you go after her, she'll blow your guts out of your asshole. So I wanted to cover this part here before I move on to the next part, because Roland finally comes to the point that he's been trying to get to, and we talked about it. She's got a gun, and she's got working bullets.
Yeah.
When Roland sent Eddie and Odetta out to find the third door and put her up, he sent them with the best bullets.
He had possible, yeah.
And he did that on purpose because he wanted them to be safe.
Yeah.
But he understood the risk of leaving the gun with Odetta, in case she turned into Detta. Eddie didn't listen. Eddie gave the gun to her and everything like that. And then the other thing that I wanted to cover right here. Oh, yeah. It is. Let me make sure I got the right one. Just 1 second. Roland smiled tiredly. A great many did as a matter of. Oh, no, I skipped a line. Yeah, let me go back just a little bit. Sorry. The gunslinger looked at him a long time and then nodded. You mean to stay? All right. As Detta, she's safer from whatever wildlife there may be around here than she would have been as Odetta. And you'll be safer from her, at least for the time being, but I can't see how it is. I don't like it, and I have no time to argue with a fool. Does that mean, Eddie asked politely, that no one ever tried to argue with you about this dark tower you're so set on getting to? Roland smiled tiredly. A great many did, as a matter of fact. I suppose that's why I recognized you you'll not be moved. One fool knows another. At any rate, I'm too weak to catch you. You're obviously too wary to let me coax you close enough to grab you, and times grow too short to argue. All I can do is go and hope for the best. I'm going to tell you one last time before I go, and hear me. Eddie, be on your guard. Then Roland did something that made Eddie ashamed of all his doubts, although no less solidly that in his own decision. He flicked open the cylinder of the revolver with a practiced flick of his wrist, dumped all the loads, and replaced them with fresh loads from the loops closest to the buckles. He snapped the cylinder back into place with another flick of his wrist. No time to clean the machine now, he said. and 'twon't matter. I reckon. Now catch and catch clean. Don't dirty the machine any more than it is already. There aren't many machines left in my world that work anymore. He threw the gun across the space between them. In his anxiety, Eddie almost did drop it, thinking he had it safely tucked into his waistband. Roland gets up, stumbles, and goes through the door.
Yeah. And opens it. You know, I remember when the other two were over there. Were here before. They both tried to open it, and we're not getting any kind of movement from it at all. And Roland just opens it very easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, subchapter 16. It says Detta watched all of this from her hiding place with hungrily gleaming eyes, which is very sinister. Subchapter 17 starts off here, says, remember Eddie, he had said in a hoarse voice, and then stepped forward. His body collapsed at the edge of the doorway as if struck by a stone wall instead of empty space. So, you know, that's just, again, a visual. I don't know, I'm trying to remember what visuals we have and haven't seen. Have we seen a visual of like someone watching as he goes through, or is it more of just like kind of looking back and seeing like the results? Because I know we've seen that where Roland's looked back and like, what goes on here? And then he goes, oh, my body. Okay, whatever. But like to see like him basically, I don't know, like collapse is it's if it's not the first time we've seen it, either way, it's still a very striking image.
I think maybe Eddie does describe it because then he gets over Roland's body to threaten him with the knife to his throat.
Well, when he goes
in,
I thought we followed Roland with that one because he basically just says, you know, whatever, you know, he doesn't. This isn't the line, but he basically says whatever will be when Eddie basically threatens he's going to kill him. Then he goes through the door and Eddie's kind of stunned. But I feel like from there we jump to another subchapter and it was like Roland on the other side, and then he like looks back. So I feel like we maybe haven't actually seen like the actual moving through the door from like the Roland side's perspective. But I could be wrong on that. But there's something about it here that just struck me as kind of slightly comical, but also kind of interesting. Again, if anyone's listened to the all of these, they'll know that I'm always kind of interested in the mechanics of things when it comes to stuff like this. And that's one of the things that really grabbed me the first time reading through this book was like the mechanics of how the whole thing worked. And on door one, for me, was fascinating as hell. I don't know how interested everyone else was, but I was really fascinated by it because just those small mechanical things always tend to get me. And then a little bit further down it says, yes, but never in his life had he felt such deadly need for sleep. And this is Eddie. After Roland goes through, it would take him soon enough. If he didn't give in willingly, sleep would rape him. And while he slept, Detta would come. Eddie fought his weariness, looked at the unmoving hills with eyes which felt swollen and heavy, and wondered how long it might be before Roland came back with the third, the pusher, whoever he or she was. Odetta, he called out without much hope. Only silence answered, and for Eddie, the time of waiting began. So that's did you find?
I found it.
Okay.
So this is how King described it when Roland went through the Lady of Shadows door. Before he could finish, the gunslinger was gone. All that was left with him was his limp, breathing body lying on the beach. Lying upon the beach. That's it. That's it.
So they kind of give you kind of an after, but they don't actually like, because here we're actually seeing him like go through the door and then just kind of like collapse. Like, yeah. So if nothing else, that could be a funny image to see like on screen, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I'm thinking because that puts us in.
It's a really good spot to stop.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, but on this last section here, did you cover all of that or just some of it? I'm sorry, I was looking at the.
I just covered kind of toward the end there, where he basically is getting tired. Definitely need for sleep is mostly what I had covered. Yeah, for chapter 17, it was mostly the sleep the sleep section at the end that I covered.
Yeah, okay, that's what I wanted to make sure that I got to. Okay,
yeah. I'm trying to remember what it was I just watched recently, and it was something that reminded me of probably what Eddie feels like there, where like I'm trying to remember what the hell it was. But it's basically just like that terror of like, you know, almost knowing that something is there, but you don't want to find it. Like I'm trying to think of what
it would almost be better if you didn't find it.
Yeah. And there's I don't even remember what the hell it was. I watched it very recently because there was a character that was like that, and they were like stumbling through like a house, and it was like kind of I think it was like a horror movie. It was something in a way where somebody probably knew full well they didn't want to find anything. But it was just like, I loved how the actor had played it. And I think like it's just in my head that's fresh in my head as I look at this with like Eddie, where it's like, as he's now alone, he's going to be looking out and being like, well, now, because like I feel like there's some bombast behind like, I want to stay, I want to find her, whatever.
Yeah.
But then suddenly when he's alone, Roland's
Everything
gone.
changes.
Yeah, now suddenly it's like,
Well,
I just feel like there's going to be a different mentality there. I guess.
It always reminds me of like there's a couple horror movies that do it really well, where it's like, yeah, stay in Michael Myers' house and be part of this reality show, and everyone's like, that's gonna be easy. But then as soon as they get alone, they're like, it's actually kind of creepy.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
that's what Eddie's going through right now.
That's what I definitely see him, because ultimately he does know what's on the other side of it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, let me. I'll just go ahead and tag our spot for the next time then. So as we get into this for next year, when we come back for book clubs. Like I said, if you missed it at the beginning, our book club episodes, this will be our last one for the quote-unquote Year of King, as we have deemed it. 2019. It's been a huge year for King. We had a book. We had a number of movies and adaptations. It's been a very, very good year to be a King fan. And yeah, if you're one that's just a book club listener, this will be our goodbye for 2019, and we will see you next year for 2020 to finish what looks like we're at 78% right now, according to Kindle, with where we'll be leaving off for this Pusher chapter. So
that much.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
So what? What's that?
Can't see it. Forgot.
Yeah, you can't see it. So yeah, we'll see you guys next time in 2020 for the rest of this. As we said, we would technically have one more book club that we would still have this year, but we're actually going to replace that with an Unfound Door for the Institute, the new King book that we want to talk about while it's still semi-fresh, even though that'll be a little bit away. So yeah, if you're just a book club listener, you probably have some time to catch up. Maybe you'll be listening to roundtables before the year's over.
Hey.
So yeah, let's go ahead and let me pull up the show notes for the closing info, because even though it's one of those things I say all the time, it's hard to remember things. First of all, if you want to subscribe to us, you can do that on Apple Podcasting. If you want to stream us, you could do it on Stitcher. If you could subscribe, rate, and review us on any of the services, but Apple is certainly the big one. We would appreciate that. If you want to find the show notes, you can do that at darktowerpalaver.com. I don't really have any show notes for this episode necessarily. I did actually do. I could let you know. I threw out on the Twitter.
Yeah.
Because somebody sent a Dark Tower meme, and I'm like, I love Dark Tower memes, and then like a few more have been sent since. So if you're listening and you are into the art of memery, any Dark Tower memes, you can go ahead and send those the way of Dark Tower Twitter.
And you didn't forward them to me.
No, not yet.
Because I'm not on Twitter.
Yeah, no, it was late last night, and I was just like looking and like laughing and stuff. But like, I think I probably even still have more stuff to go look at right now because I haven't really signed on much today. But yeah, I'll definitely send them your way because I know you're a lover of the meme arts as well.
I am.
Any Dark Tower memes could be sent to Twitter, and we will of course enjoy them.
Yep.
So Peter, what can you tell us on the way out here?
If you want to send us memes on Twitter, you can do that. It's at Dark Tower Pod. That's at Dark Tower POD. You can also post them to our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Dark Tower Palaver. If you want to get involved in the show and email us about anything, whether it's a book club topic, you want to go over something that we just talked about in Drawing of the Three, send it to us. darkttowerpalaver@gmail.com. We'll also take emails. We still have the questionnaire up on our website, right? For
it's
newer listeners.
There's an option on the side of the website that says for new listeners. You can click on that.
It's our way of getting to know our fans and what they're in. I know some of the questions we've asked before here on the air. Character, favorite moment, anything that stands out to you, stuff like that. They can send that to us again, darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. We stream all of our shows live. It's youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. Make sure to subscribe, like to it, ring the bell so you get notifications when we go live. Not always the same time, usually around this time every other week. That is 3 p.m. Mountain Time, 5 p.m. Eastern Time for those of you
on Saturdays.
On Saturdays. And so the book clubs do not stay up on YouTube. I always have to say that to make sure that people know that they don't stay up due to the copyright issues with the sound clips. But the roundtables are up there since we started doing them live. You can go back and watch, see the slides, just like I see here in the office, for what Tad shows me.
Yeah, indeed. And in the chat, Jack says, thank you. Seriously, you guys are awesome. I'm sorry to hear the wait for more book clubs, but at least there's more roundtables to come. So yeah, thank you, first of all, for the kind words. But yes, just so that everyone's clear, in case you're just listening to this and thinking that like it's the end of the year for everything, it's not. We still have something in the way of we got two roundtables in October. We got the Institute at the beginning of November, and then we'll still have 3 episodes after that. And one of those will be our call-in show. So make sure to tune in for the next roundtable, which is coming up in a couple weeks. In that, we will have everything solidified in terms of scheduling, and we will tell you guys exactly date and time for that call-in show. And we'll tell you all the details in terms of what to sign up for to make sure you have the right things to call in. Because I think I mentioned on a roundtable recently, I stopped paying for the phone number after using it like twice over like the last almost 4 years and paying for it for almost 4 years. I finally canceled it. So we'll have all those details on the next roundtable. So join us then and get ready to plan live
interactions. We might have questions. We might have trivia. We don't know what we're going to do yet. We're still kind of hashing that out. But I think the best thing that we could do to make it real easy on that one is let's just give out your phone number.
Well, how am I going to hook my phone to the soundboard? I mean, I honestly would have done that. I mean, you could even get like Google Voice has like things where you can sign up for like a voice over IP number for free. But like hooking because I use like an old style, in a lot of ways, an old style board that just has a USB thing built in to where I can plug it into the computer, but it's an analog soundboard, and we're using analog mics. So yeah, hooking a phone to that would be the hard part. But no, we'll have a few different ways to do it, and I think like we'll hopefully it'll be a time that a lot of people can join us, because we'll have also the chat as well. If people just want to be part of the chat, it'll just be a fun little thing. And
for sure,
honestly, I think it's been a while since we've done one, because I think this might even be a feeler to where like we don't have to do them only once a year. We could possibly do them more often.
Very well could be.
So there's a lot obviously coming up. Hopefully some news will happen as well over the next little bit. But yeah, until next time.
Yeah, it's gone kind of quiet, hasn't it?
For Dark Tower especially. I mean, Stephen King wise, there's always stuff going on. Yeah. But Dark Tower wise, yeah, I feel like before the year's over, we'll probably hear something. Just because it seems like, like how long is post-production going to take on a single episode?
Yeah.
And then get it to Amazon and then allow them time to digest it and then make a decision. I feel like that should be by the New Year's, but like not that I know anything about deadlines, but
for sure,
there just seems to me that the gut feeling tells me that we'll know something by that point. So
you heard it first here on Dark Tower Palaver. Tad guarantees news on the Amazon series.
All right, guys. See you guys next time. And as we always say, long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks.
Okay, guys in the chat that are still here, thank you guys for joining us. We're clear on the podcast side. Let's see, we got Jack, Robert, Mark was in here. Yeah, and then we had some other people. We had some silent people. I saw the chat numbers go up there a little bit for a bit. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you guys for being part of the conversation. We always appreciate it. It just always adds to the show. And we will see you guys in a couple weeks for a roundtable, and we're excited for the rest of the year. It's going to be a lot of fun. All right, see you guys.